Interviews are always highly awaited in the two conferences. So now I'm pleased to leave the chair to Paulo Ney for the interview of John Leesmiller, the co-founder of Overleaf. So John, Paulo, it's up to you.
Thank you. Welcome, John. You have the floor. You know, the idea is we have a conversation about you know, what you do and what your interests are and so forth. So the first question I want to ask you is, how was your first contact with computing? Can you tell us how it happened, or even if you can remember it?
It was a pretty long time ago, but the first one I can remember was in primary school, so it must have been like 7 or 8 years old, and we had some old Apple IIs in the library. And I remember they ran a small number of programs. One I can remember was this touch typing game where you had to like race by touch typing, and I was really bad at that. I could not get my head around how people could remember so many buttons. So I didn't get off to a great start with computing, but I fortunately my school had a few other computers, and within the next couple of years, I remember there was a Tandy, which was an old make of MS-DOS compatible sort of PC, and it had Quick Basic on it. So some of my friends and I started learning how to write simple programs on that. I think most of them were like text-based adventure games, so a lot of ifs and thens and elses, and that was about it. It was a good system though, pretty easy to learn.
And when were you introduced to tech and friends?
Pretty late, if I'm honest. So I think I started around 2006, because I was doing an internship, and an internship we'll probably come back to, but I was interning at a company that was working on self-driving vehicles, and we had some mathematical modeling to do. And so most people were writing things up in Word. I wanted to try something else. So I think I started with LYX, the LYX, what you see is what you get editor. And I wrote up a few papers in that. And then eventually I realized that I could just write in the LaTeX source. And then I switched to that after that. So yeah, pretty late. I will say, you know, it's amazing to me that we have so many students using Overleaf today at undergraduate and sometimes even secondary level. I don't think I've done anything other than write things out by longhand for most of my university career, until that internship. So.
You do have a formation in mathematics, isn't it?
Yep. So I studied computer science as an undergraduate, and then I went on to do a PhD in engineering mathematics over at Bristol in the UK. That's
where your statistics part comes from. I read some of your papers, and the ones on 2048 are very, very interesting, and some of the statistics there went beyond what I really could understand very easily, and I had to go a couple things so I could go back to the paper and continue it and understand it well. To anybody listening to this interview, I do strongly recommend. The game is addicting. It's called 2048. You can play it on the web. You can play it on your iPhone or whatever, but the papers by John are a little bit hard to get into. There's a higher level of math that's required to understand every step of it, but extremely interesting and also addictive. Let me ask you this: what moves you more these days? Technology, coding, tech?
Yeah, probably technology in general. I guess when I started out at Overleaf, I was very much doing the coding, but now I while Overleaf's grown to over 60 people now. So my role has changed quite a lot. So I tend to work at a slightly higher level now. I occasionally get to touch the code, but mostly we have people who are, professionals who do most of that now. So yeah, I try to operate at a slightly higher level, looking at things like architecture and how the various bits fit together and long-term vision for where we're going. So I guess that's more on the technology side. Yeah, I guess I feel I should always say that my understanding of LaTeX is also very much a practitioner's understanding. I did do the Overleaf sort of support, first line and second line and third line support for many years. And there I learned just how little LaTeX I really know. We later hired some very, very capable LaTeX experts like Nancy Lim and several more after her, who've showed me that I know almost nothing, but I was still able to support some people who had basic LaTeX questions over the years.
So you were a taller coder before you met TechLaTeX.
Yep.
And that is what you used to start and build Overleaf.
Yes, I was already working as a software engineer, so I guess going way back, I started at that pretty young. So when I was, after doing some quick basic, that was around the 2000.com bubble. So anyone who could code anything could get a job. So I actually got a part-time job, even though I was like 13, writing some I guess at that point it was Visual Basic rather than Quick Basic, but same idea. So yeah, so I started out there, and then I did the computer science degree, which mostly I studied the mathematical bits more than the practical ones, but I still worked quite a bit on the side. So I gained experience there. And I think, yeah, so there's, depending on how far back in my history of blogs you go, there's a blog post from 2009, which I think is the earliest public record of Overleaf, or at least the idea behind Overleaf. And that was back in the day, there was this service called Etherpad, which was like a very early basic precursor to Google Docs. And so my collaborators and I, when I was a PhD student, were basically using that to write our papers. But then Google bought Etherpad and shut it all down. So before they'd done that, I'd actually written a bunch of scripts that sort of did crazy things like download the Etherpad and compile it, upload the PDF somewhere. So it kind of had all the components of Overleaf. But then as soon as Google came and shut the whole thing down, I decided, well, it can't be too hard to start, writing my own Etherpad thing. And so that's how Overleaf got started.
Mm-hmm. You did make John Hammersley before Overleaf, isn't it?
Correct. So we were both working at a company called Advanced Transport Systems, and we built the world's first computer-guided taxi system, which went on to be called the Heathrow Pod at Heathrow Airport. So it was basically 20 computer-guided taxis that ran on their own roads. So this was, very basic compared to the stuff that Google and Tesla, and well, not Google anymore, Waymo and Tesla are doing today. But we actually managed to get something into production in 2011. So that opened, and so John and I met at the company. We were part of I think we were in the systems research division. It was a very small company. I think it was even smaller than Overleaf is now, but there was still a systems research division. We worked on simulation software mostly. And yeah, one of the good things about the company was that it was very open. So we worked with a lot of people in academia, and that was another reason that we needed a good collaboration tool so that we could work on our papers together with all the people at university and in the company. And that's still something that people do on Overleaf today.
Mm-hmm. What do you consider more important in terms of skills to have competing or complementary or similar skills as your partner in developing a job like Overleaf?
You definitely benefit from having complementary skills. Pretty rare to find someone who can found a business as a solo founder, but they certainly do exist. There are just a lot of different aspects of a business that you need to cover. So the split between John H. and I was always that John looked at more of the business side of things, more of the commercial side, and I looked after the technology side. And that worked pretty well. So, you know, John is actually pretty technical, doesn't always let it on, but he was also fairly technical, but he also could do much more effectively than I could. Many of the commercial parts of the business, like talking to our early customers in the publishing industry, raising investment, he definitely led all of that. And that also freed up some of my time to focus on initially building the product and the prototypes and all of that, and then eventually growing to manage the engineering team. Because there's a lot of hiring required to go from 2 people in 2012 to 60 odd today, 10 years later.
What would you name as your biggest challenges right now at Overleaf?
Yeah, I think we have quite a few growing pains. So every time you double in size, something stops working, is my experience. Communication just gets harder and harder as you get larger. I'm always amazed at companies with thousands of employees can work at all. It's pretty challenging, even with 60 employees, to keep everyone on the same page, aligned. And, you know, it's something that we are still working on, I would say. And, you know, I think all companies still have to work at that, no matter how big they are. So, yeah, probably these days it's almost a cliche, but it's about communication and trying to get all these people with different skills to work together and work together efficiently. We certainly benefit from having a very passionate group of people. Something I feel extremely lucky and proud of is that everyone at Overleaf is very passionate about either the technology or the impact that we have on making science communication a little bit faster and easier. And there's lots of people who just really like LaTeX and tech. So I feel it's a very special company to have so many people who are really, really passionate about the mission that we have.
Is Techlive a big stone on your path? Techlive improvements and Techlive changes.
Yes. So, well, I mean, we're extremely grateful to Techlive. You know, without Techlive, we would really struggle to maintain any kind of compatibility between Overleaf and the offline world, and that's something that we definitely try to do. You know, ideally, if it works offline, it should work on Overleaf, and vice versa. We have very few things that are Overleaf specific. That said, yet Techlive is a challenging target. The fact that it's always a moving target is probably the biggest challenge we have, because we have to cut a release and ship that to millions of people. So we're working on it right now. Techlive 2022 is in the testing phase. So basically what we do is we take a snapshot of Techlive sometime pretty soon after the official release, and then we run it against all of our gallery projects. So Overleaf has a template gallery where there are, I think, like around 10,000 projects that people have submitted that are licensed appropriately for us to be able to use them for testing. And so we basically just run all of those and we see what breaks. And if something very serious breaks, then we have to figure out how to patch our image to try to fix that without breaking too many other things. So yeah, we definitely do find the Techlive release process a bit of a struggle. And we are in contact with the Techlive team. Usually by the time we find one of the problems with our gallery, though, we discovered it's already been reported by someone in the open source community. So it's pretty rare that we actually find a new bug, but we certainly hit most of the bugs that everybody else hits. So hopefully, if all goes well, I think it's in the final round of testing, and the key guy, Eric, is on holiday for a week. But when he's back, I think we're gonna hit the publish button, and that will become available.
Mm. Well, would you allow me to ask a question that I asked JH last time around?
Sure.
When we will be able to use Overleaf on our iPhones and Android as a native app?
Yes, so as a native app, I can neither confirm nor deny that there are plans to do that, but it's definitely on our radar. One of the things we're working on at the moment is that we've moved the entire editor, so the actual sort of thing that you type into, from a piece of software called ACE to a newer piece of software called CodeMirror 6, which is a big project. So currently, I think 20% of users can see the new editor, because we roll out most things incrementally now. Because if we rolled it out to everyone at once, we very quickly get overwhelmed if there's anything wrong with it. So that should have much better support on mobile. It uses a very different approach to actually making the editor work, which plays a lot better with mobile browsers. So at least for this year and probably next year, our focus is just on getting it working better on web browsers on mobile devices. But I am sure that the day will come when we do make the jump into native apps. I just don't know when.
Well, thank you very, very much. I mean, this was a wonderful conversation, and hope to have you here back again sometime soon as well.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to stick around.
Yeah, if you want to join the floor, just raise your hand, and we still have time. So if you have any questions for John, raise your hand, and we will bring you in the fold. John, how much? I don't know if you can talk about all of this, but how much of the company is remote, and how much is it physically local?
Yep, I can definitely talk about that. It's in our job ads. We are now basically all remote. So, yep, we have staff in, I've lost count of the number of countries now, but most of our staff are in the UK, the US, some in Canada. We have a growing number in Germany, and places like France and Portugal. So we are all remote. We're not a fully distributed team though, so we do try to constrain our hiring to a range of time zones. That means that people have overlap. So basically, in the UK, you have a sort of, so we have what are called core hours, which are 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. UK time. So if you're in the UK, you tend to have a slightly quieter morning, and if you're in the US, you have a slightly quieter afternoon to get on with things, and then all the meetings in the core hours. That's how we manage that.
Frank, can you hear us?
Hi, John. Your last statement about your gallery testing and everything made me wonder if we should talk with you about the possibility to actually align that with the LaTeX releases, in the sense that, I mean, right now, you probably have have seen our sins in various respects, because every half year we have the LaTeX releases quite heavily sort of improving stuff, but also in corner cases breaking stuff, which is a natural thing if you have millions of users out there. And you may or may not know that we actually run a development version of LaTeX, which is available to everybody, and the intent is that developers and users can make use of that before we actually hit the street. And if I understand you right, I don't know exactly how you do your gallery testing, but if you actually have this as a sort of process, it might be quite helpful for everybody if that process could encompass running the development release at the late stage before we actually sort of switch over, because then you would probably find bugs that otherwise will be found by you when you actually see the full release. And I think by the end of the day, that would save you effort as well as saving everybody else pain. And if we have a sort of feedback loop this way, I think that could be very beneficial to everybody. Just to bring this up as a potential sort of alignment between our team and Overleaf there in the future. Yep,
we would be very happy to talk about that, because as you say, we will hit the bugs anyway. So, yep, I think we have talked about it at a previous TUG, and it's definitely something we're still interested in doing. Setting up some kind of LaTeX CI, continuous integration, where we can just run it against our large sample of documents and report back on error rates. It's basically what we do internally now. The other thing I'd say would be interesting is that we track performance across the Techlive releases as well. One of the things that we see is that every year things tend to get slightly slower. So we would also be very interested in trying to set up some kind of benchmark test set, because we're not sure that our gallery test set is particularly representative as a benchmarking tool, but probably we could set up some sort of thing we would be more comfortable with as a benchmarking tool. And that could also alert on things like performance regressions, which at the moment I think there's not a lot of visibility into.
You have a question from Jeremy on the
yes.
chat.
Yeah, I can say a few things. So, and this ties into the slight performance decreases every year as more and more servers are required. So Overleaf is hosted on Google Cloud Platform now. When we did the integration with Share LaTeX in 2017, we were hosted on essentially every cloud service, which meant that if any cloud service was down, Overleaf had some kind of problem. So one of the things that I've been working on for the last 5 years is consolidating all of our hosting on Google Cloud. The number of nodes, I don't think we give an exact number, but I can say it is many, many hundreds of cores continuously compiling people's LaTeX. And there's also some fraction of that for running the service, but our LaTeX compilers are by far the most compute hungry thing that we do.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very, very much, John, for joining us, taking time out of your Sunday for this. Welcome to TUG, and please come back and join us at other years.
Great. Thanks again for having me. And thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.